Hey, Nick here. I'm working on this 65 Thunderbird that's been sitting for many years, at least 7 that I know of. And that's just information from the people who own this car. It may have been sitting longer before they got it, but they've had it for 7 years and it has not run. Anyway, I should have done a first start video, and I didn't think of it. It was pretty messed up too. The engine had a bunch of crap on it. You know, a fuel regulator and hoses were going in all the wrong directions and all this other stuff. The brake booster was upside down. I had to pull that out. But this car, this 65, it's kind of rare because it has the transistorized ignition that you see mostly on 64s. Not too many 65s have this. Some do. I'm not saying they all don't. Some have it, but it's very rare on 65. And usually these have been bypassed. Usually they've been bypassed poorly. I would imagine there's different ways to do it. The one way that I found, which seems to be the easiest way, without having to take all this apart. Now you have to remember something. I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and I've seen some pretty convoluted things happen over here, people trying to eliminate that or bypass it. You know, taping all the wires together, cutting them, and doing this and that, and just making a mess of everything. And all I did was do this. I've done nothing else to any of it. So this has a Petronix in it. You see, it's got the red and black Petronix wires. Now this has a Petronix igniter, not an igniter 2. It's just got the first generation igniter in it. And it's got a different coil. The original coil that came with this car was negative ground. Power went to the positive side of the coil, and the negative side of the coil was grounded because of the transistorized ignition. Well, that coil doesn't exist on this car anymore. Now it's got a conventional 12-volt coil where positive is power from the ignition system and negative goes to the distributor. So in the manual for the Petronix, in the instructions, you can see here, right here, it says, if you do not have a ballast resistor, you must connect the red igniter wire to a 12-volt source that is controlled by the ignition switch. And if you do have a ballast resistor, it says to connect the power wire before this resistor, so you have 12 volts. So in other words, the Petronix requires 12 volts, not 8 or 10 volts through the ignition resistor wire or through a ballast resistor. If you have a stock Thunderbird without the transistorized ignition, your car will have an ignition wire, a resistance wire that cuts the voltage to the distributor down to, you know, somewhere around 8, 10 volts, something like that. It'll cut the power down so it doesn't burn the coil out. But these Petronix, they require 12 volts. Because of that, you can then hook, if you have this transistorized ignition, you can just hook a distributor wire from here and go to the positive side of the distributor. And you've bypassed the entire thing. Because it has a conventional coil and you've done this bypass, you've completely bypassed this transistorized ignition system, which probably doesn't work to begin with. This has got a cold start relay on it, and then this resistor. And this is for a tachometer, by the way. That's what this is for, to hook up a tachometer. So anyway, in the wiring diagram here, I blew this up. You can see that this red wire with a green stripe, that's a green stripe, just in case you know. This is red with a white stripe. Here's the red with the green stripe. That goes right to the ignition switch, right here. So red with a green stripe goes right along here and right to the resistor, which is that right there. So you can go, now the instruction said from the ignition switch to the coil. So go from here to here. It's switched power. It only comes on when the ignition switch is turned on, and it turns off when the ignition switch is turned off. It's that simple. So if you're trying to bypass your transistorized ignition, that's the way to do it. Now, obviously I have this hooked up temporarily. I'm going to have to wire it in, you know, nicely, make it look good. I'm going to have to do all that. But I just wanted to share that with you guys because I don't come across these every day. You know, this was even a problem for me until I started reading about it and figuring it out. Because they had see what they did here? They put a resistor on here and they've got it hooked up to the power window relay. And then they had the wire going across here, and then they had another wire going from here to the distributor as well. So it was all Mickey Mouse.